What is disorganized attachment style? What are the signs of it? And how do you heal from this so that you can feel more secure in your relationships? Today's episode is a much requested deep dive into disorganized attachment, otherwise known as fearful-avoidant, my personal journey as someone who used to be wired this way to now being secure, and so much more. You need to listen to this episode, especially if you're unsure of your attachment style, right after this intro. Welcome to the Inner Child Podcast. Now with 2 million downloads, I help high achievers recover from painful relationships and childhood trauma. Let's heal together on Season 2 of the Inner Child Podcast. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Inner Child Podcast. I am your host, Gloria Zhang. I'm an award-winning therapist, relationship coach, and author. And today we have a highly requested episode. Thank you to all these people. Everyone wants an episode on disorganized attachment. Ever since I put out episode number 71 on WTF are anxious and avoidant attachment styles. So I would highly recommend going back to episode 71. Listen to that one first. It is in season 1, which means it's not on YouTube, but you can find it on Spotify and Apple, where I did briefly touch upon exactly how attachment styles work. Now, disorganized people often feel extremely broken because they're constantly in this turmoil. They're highly reactive and they flip back and forth between being anxious and avoidant, but never feeling like the hurt is resolved. And so if we do a Google search, we can look at some common signs of disorganized attachment, but I don't feel like these signs really do it justice. So, strong need for closeness, feeling unlovable or unworthy, struggling to believe your partner when they say they love you, feeling uncomfortable or distrustful of your partner's supportive actions when they try to connect with you, constantly looking for signs of rejection or betrayal. So these signs are correct, but they can also apply to people with anxious or avoidant attachment. But disorganized is very different. So I'm just going to take off my expert hat just for a moment and be a human with you. You know how Facebook has the 8 years ago memory thing? Well, I did get one the other day for a picture of me in my 20s wearing God knows what. I was trying to impress people. I had this big smile on my face. And if I didn't tell you this, you wouldn't know that behind that grin, I was so lost. I was so messed up, probably in between relationships at that point, probably sleeping around, not because I wanted to, but I felt like I had to. The out of controlness I felt at the time, the reactivity, the deep hurt that I felt like I was just dragging from one relationship to the next. I couldn't imagine myself being happy and feeling good and relaxed in a relationship, even though I so deeply wanted it. I mean, it was all I ever wanted was just to be in a happy relationship. But you take where I was, right? Like 11 out of 10 messed up on prescribed benzos for my depression and anxiety. And now, age 33, happily engaged, cool as a cucumber, in control, fulfilled. And I now have this career where I get to go out and help other people. It's just absolute night and day. And there is absolutely nothing special about me other than the fact that I'm very stubborn and I will persist to get a solution, which I'm sure many of you are as well. If I can do this and complete this journey, then you can as well. I sincerely believe that if you take the right steps, you understand why the steps are there, there's no reason why you can't heal and become happy and secure in your own relationships. And I also want to tell you that you are not broken. You've just been hurt, and it's a completely different thing. So today we're going to cover 3 different things. We're going to talk about what exactly is disorganized attachment and how is it different from being anxiously or avoidantly attached. Plus, at the very end, I'm going to tell you how you can get a free personalized attachment style assessment and healing plan so that you can start implementing these changes and become secure. So first, I'm going to give a brief 3-minute history lesson on attachment styles and exactly how some amazing scientists actually discovered disorganized attachment. So attachment theory began all the way back in the 1950s with British psychologist John Bowlby, who studied the relationship between babies and their caregivers. And he suggested that, lo and behold, our early childhood relationships actually affect the way we have relationships. Wow. Before then, we didn't know. So it's a very big deal for all of us here. And then in the 1970s, a developmental psychologist named Mary Ainsworth, remember that name, decided to expand on this work by creating the strange situation experiment. What is the strange situation experiment? Well, literally, they put babies and mothers in these rooms. And behind the room, there was this glass panel that the researchers were watching and taking notes. And they asked the mother to leave the baby all alone in that strange room in order to be replaced by a complete stranger. So the baby is now stuck there with the stranger for a few minutes. The researchers are behind the glass window watching every move. And finally, the stranger leaves and the mother comes back into the room. And not only were the researchers interested in how the babies reacted to the stranger, they were also interested in how the baby reacted to the mother after she came back to the room. And Mary and her researchers noticed that babies had very different reactions when mother returned. In fact, 3 different types of reactions that they put into 3 different categories, which we now know as secure, anxious, and avoidant. Now, the secure babies, they were overjoyed. They were actually relieved when their mother came back, and they moved on pretty quickly from the incident, which showed us that even though it was scary being there with a complete stranger, but being reunited with the mother actually soothed the baby, and it actually solved the problem. So they were able to move on. And that was about half of the kids. But the anxiously attached babies had a really hard time after mother left, but even after mother returned, they continued to appear distressed. They were very clingy, and it was almost as if mother returning had no impact, like they couldn't be soothed either way. The avoidant babies avoided their mothers when they returned. And if they were upset at all by the stranger, it didn't show. They didn't appear to be very fazed or even bothered when left in the first place. And sometimes the avoidant babies would just be sitting in a corner playing by themselves, not even looking up. So if you recognize these attachment patterns in yourself, you'll notice how early these patterns really begin. And at this point, you might be wondering, well, Gloria, that's only 3 of them. What happened to the 4th attachment style? What happened to disorganized attachment style? So the word disorganized, which later was also called fearful-avoidant in adults, wasn't coined until 1986. This was when 2 other researchers named Main and Solomon decided to reinvestigate and reanalyze Mary Ainsworth data from her strange situation experiment. And this time around, they discovered that there was a bunch of babies that didn't quite fit the original 3 categories of secure, anxious, and avoidant. In fact, these other babies acted just like the word itself. They were disorganized. They were inconsistent, confused, a little bit all over the place. They seemed to show both avoidant and anxious characteristics at the same time. So an example could be they would be turning away and avoiding their mother while simultaneously reaching out for them, right? And so even more, they have linked this attachment style to parents and caregivers who were abusive, who were frightening, inconsistent, or neglectful. And that seems to cover a lot of abusive situations. So I have personally watched a lot of these baby videos, like hours and hours of them. I mentioned in episode 71 that I was trained to code attachment style behavior back when I worked with children, meaning I could watch a 5-minute clip of a child with their parent, and I can tell you with high accuracy what their attachment style is. In fact, I can do this with adults too. I can watch a couple interact and I can pretty much guess what their attachment styles are. So I know it's a highly unusual skill set, but it's probably why people hire me as their coach. And so in these videos where I've observed disorganized babies, there's something very weird that happens after the mother leaves. So at first, they're kind of freaking out. They're in distress. They're flipping back and forth. But then eventually, the disorganized child just collapses on the floor. They just fall down. And it's because they've run out of strategies to try to cope with this stressful, strange situation. So being avoidant doesn't make the pain go away. Clinging onto the parent doesn't make the pain go away. And so they literally break down and fall into despair. And what's even more interesting is I've discovered that a lot of our adult clients inside my soulmate program do the exact same thing in their relationships. So to give you an example, I had a client in Soulmate who was a very high-performing corporate woman. She was a boss bee. She knew how to get things done. But if she had been ghosted on a date or if she felt ignored in a relationship, her entire world would just crumble. She would stop functioning. Basically, she couldn't think, she couldn't focus, and would just cry and cry for hours on her bed or just zone out and do nothing in her bed. It's a very similar trauma response where the body just shuts down because it has exhausted all options. It has run out of strategies to try to cope with this pain and this loneliness. And I mean, I work with people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s who still continue to feel this way because this pattern, it's not like a cold, it just goes away with age. If you don't fix it, you're stuck with this in your relationships for the rest of your life. And so eventually, using the steps that I'm about to share with you in a second, we were able to help her rewire this pattern of behavior over about the course of 5 to 6 months. That's pretty standard. And using our advice, she was able to attract a wonderful, wonderful guy into her life, is in a happy, healthy, stable relationship. And because of that safety and stability that she really needed, no more meltdowns, right? She's created the right environment where she's not going into these depths of despair every so often. That history lesson was longer than 3 minutes, but it should have helped. So let's now talk about the ping pong effect of disorganized attachment style and how it's different from just being anxious or avoidant. You guys know the song, Should I Stay or Should I Go by The Clash? Well, that's basically what attachment styles are. You have a need for a connection and you have a person in front of you who might give it to you. And so in order to fulfill that need, there's only 2 things you can do. You can either move towards the person and hopefully they'll give you that connection, or you can try to shut down your needs so that you don't want to go towards that person. There's no other way about it. And that's what attachment styles are, right? So a secure person is balanced. They feel balanced in being able to approach, but also balanced in being able to be by themselves. An anxious person is just going forward, attaching. An avoidant person is going away, shutting down. But the disorganized person has tried to do both of them, but neither strategy is actually making them feel any better. Often it's because the parent that raised them was very inconsistent. For example, alcoholic parents or parents with addictions who become a complete night and day person, different personalities based on whether they were abusing substances that day or not. So not only is there inconsistency in the household, they're screaming one minute and they're happy the next, the poor child has no idea whether to approach or avoid the parent. Even worse, if you're the eldest child or if you are the responsible child, you now have to take care of your other siblings and protect them, and you're trying to figure out, did mom drink today? Is dad working today? This also happens with very moody or emotionally immature parents or parents themselves who have mental illness, chronic illnesses. So for example, if your mom or dad has a temper, one minute they're loving and happy, and the next minute they're jumping off the wall, screaming at you. The kid doesn't know what to do, right? And they're terrified of being in that sort of environment. Another situation could be maybe when you try to become avoidant, you can't because privacy is not allowed in your household, or you get punished for trying to shut yourself down. In fact, I think that's what the case was for me, where I wasn't allowed to be alone in my room when I was upset. I wasn't allowed to physically leave, right? I was forced to be there and feel all my feelings. And so I couldn't become avoidant, but I learned to dissociate. And on the flip side, if you try to cling onto your parents and move towards them, and they push you away, or they make you feel bad about it. They call you a crybaby, or they make you feel ashamed for wanting closeness. Well, that's not going to work either, because clearly that strategy didn't work. Or sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And now you have this poor, dysregulated child who is so emotionally deprived, who is so lonely. There's no consistency, no stability. It's horrible for a child's development when at the same time, they're also trying to make friends at school. You're also trying to learn your alphabet and multiplications. And so not only are you trying to meet your needs, you have become so hyper aware of other people's emotions and their needs, and you become a people pleaser, and you're on edge, always trying to anticipate the next move, and possibly also trying to protect your siblings so that they don't get hurt, trying to not be abused. Oh my goodness, it is absolutely exhausting. And people who grew up this way are the people who become my clients now. And I see how even though this happened so long ago, even though the parents might have passed away, right? They're not even alive anymore, but these patterns persist until we do the right work. So if you hear this and you relate and resonate with any of these pieces, you are not alone. There are so many people out there who are just like you. And there might be times where you feel like you're the only person in the world who is suffering this much. And I can guarantee you, you are not. We are all in this together. Which brings me to the next point, which is how common or rare is disorganized attachment? Well, we used to think that it was super rare, but recent analysis show that it's actually a lot more common than we think. So the most up-to-date data shows that, about half of the population is securely attached, but 15% is avoidant, about 10% is anxious, and a whopping 23.5% of kids are disorganized. So these percentages are from the most recent meta-analysis, which basically means they analyze over 200 studies, over 20,000 different children, showing that it's actually a lot higher, more common. In the past, we thought it was less than 5%. But now we're seeing that actually it's not as clear-cut as we once thought. And I want you to keep in mind that you can have different attachment styles for different kind of relationships. And this is something I really don't hear anyone else talking about, because you can be avoidant in romantic relationships, but you can be secure with friendships. And you can have different attachment styles with different gendered friendships. So for example, if you have sisterhood wounds, which we've talked about on previous episodes, you might be avoidant with women, but be anxious with men, for example. You can have anxious avoidant attachment styles with your bosses or coworkers, but avoidant attachment style with your neighbors. So it's very much a thing. So now let's talk about how we can heal from disorganized attachment so that we can gradually become more secure. Gloria, how did you do it? How did you help tons of other people change from being disorganized to secure? As I've mentioned, I work with people from their 20s all the way to their 70s and beyond. It is never too late. They say that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now. Right now. You deserve it. You can do it. And it took me many years to change this, from being a complete hot mess in my relationships to now being in a very stable relationship with my hubby. But that's because I didn't have this roadmap, which I'm going to share with you. And many of my clients take much less time than me, from months to a year. And that's something I'm very proud of. If I can help people shortcut their way because they're not doing trial and error the way that I did, they have a clear, concrete path with specific milestones to hit. That's how you know that it's worth it for you. So I'm going to share with you the formula that we developed for healing disorganized attachment style. And this is really based on my experience from working with children, teens, adults, and helping over 100 people complete this journey. And you will be able to get a copy of this as well. So we want to spend 50% of our time working on emotional regulation, 20% of our time clearing the childhood trauma, and 30% of our time attracting and creating healthy new connections. And when you put all three together, it's Feel, Heal, Attract, which is my Feel, Heal, and Attract system. It is the framework I created that I work with in all my books, all my services. And the reason why we're spending so much time on feel, on emotional regulation, is because of the reactivity. People with disorganized attachment styles are highly reactive. They're flipping back and forth from loving you to hating you, never feeling like the hurt is resolved. They're constantly self-sabotaging. And so in order to stop self-sabotaging, you need an emotional regulation system that nips those eruptive emotions in the bud. So things like fear, the urge to obsess, the urge to run away, the urge to nitpick, resentment. These are all things that we need a method of stopping in its tracks, feeling them and processing them so that we're not reacting by sabotaging or hurting our partner, for example. Now, in order to stop feeling triggered, which is where the emotions come from, we spend 20% of our time focusing on those inner child wounds, right? So the abandonment, the feeling broken, the neglect, and the guilt, that is the root of where this all comes from. And the third one is the attract. So disorganized people heal the best when they're inside a secure relationship. And I'm going to make an episode later on best pairings, like which attachment styles are best for each other. But in order for disorganized people to make a relationship last, they need to become good at attracting 3 different things. Number 1, pick a partner who can offer you patience and stability, aka someone with a secure attachment style. Number 2, learn to nip conflict in the bud before it escalates into drama. Number 3, gradually pace out the relationship before it becomes a long-term connection so that you're not over-investing or getting way too attached from the get-go. And that's it. That is the plan that we give to our disorganized clients, and it works. And these 3 steps I've just shared with you is exactly what we guide our clients through inside our Situationship to Soulmate program, which is for high achievers who want to have better dating and relationship experiences. And we've done that successfully for many years. So if you want to get your copy of this, or if you're not sure about your attachment style and you want your own personalized healing plan like this, so this one is the disorganized plan, but we also have a different plan for avoidant people and for anxious people. And you get to receive a free printout like this. And all you have to do is book your free one-to-one breakthrough call with myself or my coaching team. Quite possibly the most life-changing 30 minutes of your life, or so we've heard. And we're really here to listen and to create this safe space for you, especially if you want some help fixing your dating or relationship patterns and you want a healthy relationship and you recognize that this is not something that you can do on your own right now. And asking for help is such a wonderful thing. And so this is open to high achievers who desire to break out of these love patterns and attract a healthy relationship. And they want to go one step beyond just listening to the podcast and actually receive the healing. So go to bygloriazhang.com/soulmate or click the link below. There's going to be a couple of quick questions first so that we can get to know you. And then you will be able to choose a time on our calendar. And we are so excited to meet you. On the call, you will receive your free attachment style assessment, which then will land you this personalized healing plan. And then you can run with it. So, my loves, I hope you enjoyed this super information-packed episode on disorganized attachment style. I hope this was a super valuable listen or watch for you. Share it with a friend. Screenshot and tag me on Instagram at @ByGloriaZhang with your biggest takeaways. And I hope you come to one of my live podcast Q&As, which I'm going to be hosting inside our community Facebook group. It is free to attend, so you can find all of those things in the show notes. I do love going live with you guys because sometimes my listeners have additional questions about recent episodes, and it's a nice opportunity for us to spend some time together. So drop a comment to let me know what you thought about this episode. Plus, if you leave comments, it shows me that people are listening and I can then create better episodes for you in the future. Have a beautiful day and an abundant life. Mwah. See you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in, bestie. I've got something for you. If you think this show deserves a 5-star review, we'll send you my free Inner Child Starter Kit as a thank you for your support, which contains exclusive wallpapers and resources for you to download. To get your kit, just upload a screenshot of your review on Apple or Spotify to my webpage, bygloriazhang.com/reviews. The link is also in the show notes. There you can also check out my healing sessions and programs at bygloriazhang.com. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and I will meet you in the next episode. Mwah!